Okay, now that we know how to put documents into the database, let's figure out how to get them back out in a more advanced fashion. The most basic operation to query documents out of the database is called find. However, it's often simpler to just look at a single document out of the database, and for this we have a helper method called findOne. All CRUD operations are syntactically presented as methods on a collection. The findOne method, when called with no arguments, gets back essentially one document at random out of the collection. This can be helpful for examining what the schema are of your documents in your collection. So here we have a document with a field called _ID, whose value is an object ID, a field called name, whose value is a string, a field called age, whose value is an integer, or some kind of number anyway, and a field called profession, whose value is another string. We can give arguments to findOne. In this case, I will hit the up arrow to get my previous input, and move around with the arrow keys. The first argument to findOne specifies what criteria I'm looking for in order to count a document as a match. That is to say, it's analogous to the where clause portion of a select statement in SQL. The argument that goes here is a document. In this case, findOne will only return to me a document where the field name has the value Jones, and there's the document with the name Jones. This is our first example of a query into MongoDB that actually has any kind of restriction in it. As you can see, the specification of what documents count as a match is given itself as a document. This is quite a variation to how things are done in, say, a traditional relational database. Instead of having a string-oriented query language, such as the SQL query language, we actually send the BSON encoding of this argument to the findOne over the wire, wrapped up in some message headers, as an operation for the database to execute. That is to say, the query that gets executed in the server is presented to the server in the form of a structured document, as opposed to a sequence of text that it needs to parse and analyze. You might be wondering why I'm explaining these details. The reason is that it's often rather tricky for people to get used to the mindset of the query language in the system being presented as a structured piece of data as opposed to a string. In fact, there is no use of string-type queries anywhere within the MongoDB server processes at this point. We'll learn a little bit more about the query language in a subsequent section, but for now I want to tell you about the second argument that you can give to findOne. Remembering that the first argument to findOne specifies what you want to see, that is to say which documents match a particular kind of where clause, the second argument to findOne allows you to stipulate what fields you want to get back from the database. The second argument to findOne is specified, just like the first one, as a document. But in this case, the fields of this document say what fields should come back from the query to the database. So, for instance, I can say that I'd like to see the name field by saying, for example, name true, and I can say, for instance, that I don't want to see the _ID field by specifying _ID false. When I execute this, I will get back any documents in the people collection where the name field is Jones, and I'll only see the name field and not the _ID field. And of course I'll only get one of them because I've asked for just one of them. So in this way, the second argument to findOne is analogous to the column list portion of the select grammar in SQL. That is to say, it allows you to specify what fields you'd like to get back from the database. Now, as a bit of a historical detail, the _ID field defaults to being present in the response from findOne, even if you don't ask for it. This is a little bit of a vestigial feature. MongoDB was conceptually originally designed with a number of goals in mind, one of which was to act as a kind of object store. And in an object store type environment, it's extraordinarily common to want to know the unique identifier of the object that you're retrieving from the database, even if you're only retrieving selected fields back from the object. And so, because of that kind of design, the _ID field is included by default, but as you see above, you can explicitly request not to retrieve it from the database in a findOne call by specifying _ID false. We'll learn a lot more about the query language as we go. findOne was just kind of an introduction. Okay, let's have a quiz. Use findOne on the collection users to find one document where the key username is the string Dwight, and retrieve only the key named email.